I've got a drum light for oil. I gotta pull into this. I gotta pull back into the church.
And as you can see, we've got our first breakdown. George's oil pressure sender is apparently giving up the ghost.
For the record, I could have just ignored it. To be fair, there's not much oil coming through it.
George and that broken-ass Jeep. I really did think he was going to get more than 200 feet before his first breakdown, but oh well.
Happily, we discovered it was just a bad sensor. Jeep breakdown number 1 in the books, and trying not to take that as an omen of things to come, we set off northeast toward Tahoe.
So after we ran our errands, we pulled out of the city, and for a while the highway was kind of boring and downhill out of Sacramento, and I did discover I had always been worried that the 4Runner might not be fast. The 4Runner is not fast. Then we started going up into the hills. And where George and Evan had no problem staying at highway speeds, it just wasn't having it. Immediately kicked it down to 4th. That didn't do much. There were times hill climbing trying to keep up with them. At the modest pace of 45 miles an hour, I even had to kick it into 3rd. It was not good.
Although the plan was for this day to largely be on-road in order to build trust in our new traveling companions, we couldn't resist pulling off the paved road to try to cut along the back country a bit on the way to Lake Tahoe.
It wasn't going to be a really big deal. It was just a little bit of a bypass that was going to take us on some dirt roads, by some rivers, off what George's atlas referred to as other paved road. We got to stop by a river. It was gorgeous, and there was nobody around. And I really appreciated being surprisingly close to a bunch of really big vacation destinations, but very isolated.
As what our maps marked as paved road, other, quickly devolved into just road, other, somewhere along the way, apparently one of my headlight lenses fell out. We came across a bit of sand.
Anyone want to play while we're here?
Holy shit.
We drove on it and thought it was an adventure. Oh, my sweet summer children. Along the way, we made a few discoveries. First, our little off-road sand adventure was child's play.
Problem.
No problems are allowed today.
I really wish someone had seen that.
Second, in the Sierras of Northern California, May is cold and snowy.
No. I just drove my Jeep through snow. Can we have a snowball fight?
Very snowy.
Oh shit.
What? Oh, I see.
Yep, we were stuck. Did I mention this is basically the first time any of us had used four-wheel drive? Yeah. With a lot of effort and swearing, the disco eventually plowed through. Keep going! Keep on it! Then the Jeep. And then the 4Runner. It felt like a tremendous victory at the time, right up until we got to the next turn. Determined not to get stuck again, I tried. And tried. And tried to get through. It was so deep the disco actually high-centered not once, but twice, and had to be rescued by the Forerunner. We resumed shoveling, and eventually had some results.
I'm gonna give it a shot. Nice! Hi, have a seat.
Afterwards, we were even treated to some actual pavement. Things were really looking up. Until they weren't. Okay, we have a bit of a problem.
No, we don't. What happened?
More snow.
A lot more snow.
Okay, so as you can see, we're so incredibly fucked. We're turning around and going back to the highway. Not how I expected this day to go, but we also didn't think there was going to be off-roading today, so c'est la vie.
This might be the scariest road I have ever driven on. I am terrified right now. Still, even after a whole day of really pleasant, actually honestly off-roading in the Jeep, I still don't trust its steering. There is so much slop in it, and that drop off the right is so sheer. If I survive this Jeep's really going to earn some trust.
The descent into South Lake Tahoe was absolutely stunning. The road ran along the edge of the mountain so high up, but with no trees on the far side, so you could see for miles all over the whole valley and the lake area. It was totally gorgeous. And we finally pulled into our lunch spot at 8 p.m. for lunch.
In the morning, we were treated to an excellent little lake view as we checked fluids and packed up. I will say I did take this opportunity to take a little revenge on Taylor for being, let's say, less than humble about yesterday.
Wait, and my car didn't start, why? You motherfucker.
Because you're a cocky bitch.
I saved you.
Yeah, that right there, that's why
How you get your coil unplugged. How the hell do you do that?
I already told you what's wrong, so it should be fairly easy to fix. Cold. Colder.
Turn the ignition coil, right?
I put the coil.
Oh, but you left the connector on top. Okay.
Yes. Well, I couldn't make it easy for you.
Today's off-roading misadventures greatly resembled yesterday's. Snow, plow, dig, stuck. For low, power! The plan was to travel through the backcountry into Bodie, one of the country's most famous ghost towns, and certainly the largest in California. This did not go well.
Anybody worried about what it might be like if there was a whole snow covering on the road? I'm trying not to think about that. Well, fuck.
There was snow, but it didn't require a lot of digging this time. We all got to have those proud moments as our cars tackled a pretty long snowbank, which wasn't anywhere near what we had to deal with yesterday, but was still challenging enough and way up in the mountains without trees this time so you could see for miles. That was a pretty fun experience.
We certainly had a sort of fun that involved a lot of manual labor.
Unfortunately, within about 3 miles of Bodie, we found a really, really long snowbank that we were not sure we'd be able to cross. Past that snowbank and around a bend was a snowbank on the edge of a mountain road that was probably the size of a house. A rather large house. And as determined as I was to tackle anything that today could throw at me, this just wasn't going to happen. And we all knew it.
Yeah. I mean, even if we make that one, we're not going to make the next one. Yeah, okay.
Hoping this wasn't becoming a trend, we bravely ran away from the snow yet again and opted for the path more traveled into Bodie further down the road.
Bodie has an interesting story. It was a boom town from the gold rush days, springing up in a miserable patch of land near a gold mine. The mine went dry by the 40s, and everyone basically decided to leave because it sucked there.
It was so much bigger than I expected it to be. I guess, ghost towns and abandoned spaces I've seen have always been like a small collection of buildings barely holding each other up around like a little square. This legitimately was a city. We walked around for a couple of hours and poked in all the little places. Some buildings you could walk into, some were locked up. It was really beautiful and really, really creepy.
In the 60s, it became a state park, and California decided to preserve Bodie in a manner they called arrested decay. This means it's allowed to be run down, but not to fall down. Honestly, seeing staff work to repair a ghost town took away some of the magic.
I mean, that said, if they weren't doing that, it probably wouldn't still be here for us to see. So, Despite, or possibly because of, our setbacks on the way into Bodie, we opted once again to try back roads out of town. This turned out to have been a very good call.
It was a little dirt road down a mountain pass with views of mountains and lakes. There was dramatic clouds the whole time. It was absolutely stunning, and I'm so glad that we did it because we didn't see another bit of snow all the way down. And I can't believe we almost didn't take this road.
Bodie was our only official site on the drive today, with the rest of the day marked out for bumbling around back roads until we reached our destination. Mono Lake, however, had other plans. To look at Mono Lake on a map, it looks like just another medium-sized lake with a small park attached. To look at Mono Lake from the backcountry road we were on, it looked spectacular.
Mono Lake is ecologically unusual. Its watershed has no outlet to the ocean, so salts accumulated by its tributaries stay in the lake. These carbonate salts react with calcium from underground springs to form limestone towers called tufa. Tufa towers grow only underwater, but they're clearly visible top to bottom at Mono Lake. This is because the city of Los Angeles, from 300 miles away, has been diverting Mono Lake's tributaries for city water for most of the 20th century. I can say, unequivocally, that Mono Lake is one of the most beautiful places I have ever been, even though its chipmunks have plague. And apparently the lake is full of unexploded munitions. Look it up. Our next stop was to be Big Pine, on the way into Death Valley. We were going to be climbing high into the mountains again for another cold night. But first, margaritas.
I mean, come on. We'd earned margaritas by that point. And then we drove up into Big Pine for our cabin in the woods evening. Yet again, we'd arrived in total darkness, but even in darkness, we could tell this was a pretty crazy road. And then as we got out towards the cabin and parked, you could hear a huge either waterfall or, rushing creek right behind the house.
The cabin was pretty neat, but also deeply creepy. We couldn't find most of the light switches, so we explored with flashlights for a bit. We also didn't have much luck making the heat work, so we bundled up and called it a night. The next morning we got a chance to explore and kind of figure out this area. It is one of the places on this trip I will definitely mark down to come back to, just as a great place to relax and kind of chill. That said, the water died shortly after we woke up. Our host did get it going again, but it was right about the time we needed to leave, so we just accepted the apology and called it good. Today was going to be the big one, Death Valley. If anything was going to kill these cars, this was it. A short drive down the mountain from the night before, and suddenly, we were there.
Oh yeah.
Wish us luck.